Yo, what's good people? Today I have another review. Today we have a Coorejam V4. This lever is probably the best looking lever I have in my collection. It just it just looks so good. Look at it, just all red. It just looks fantastic, and I really like the aluminium body. There's two variants of this, or three. I think there is the ivory variant, there's the red Nylube variant. Now the Nylube, I still have Nylube on the lever. It's here in the collar, as you can see, and also the battop is Nylube as well. So the battop being Nylube, it kind of has more of a grippy texture, but it's smooth at the same time. I personally think it feels a little bit nicer to play on than Delrin, but I like Delrin, but I just think the Nylube battops really feel, it's smooth, but it's has texture, very difficult to describe without actually touching it. Again, yeah, it feels very nice to play with and play on. But can we just appreciate how beautiful this lever is? Like, this is insane. So as I said before, red aluminium body, Nylube battop. We have a red aluminium, and this is 9mm. This is actually extra, you don't get this included, but I thought I'd be silly not to get the red shaft. So yeah, this is 9mm. You can also get this in 8mm, but this is a red 9mm aluminium bolt shaft, as you can see at the bottom. Bolt shaft. Now, I personally prefer bolt shafts. The only thing I don't like about bolt shafts is that they don't allow for shaft spin, and I like a little bit of shaft spin, not free spin like the Neely Neo, for example, but I do like a bit of shaft spin. Like the Sandrix V7 has a little bit of shaft spin, but as you can see, it's not moving at all. So there's no shaft spin at all, which for some people, they would like that, and I think it's just super solid. There's zero movement in the lever. It is a very, very solid lever, but that's something to keep in mind, is that if you go with the bolt shaft, you're not going to get any shaft spin. Now, they do have E-clip shafts, which allow for shaft spin. So if you like shaft spin like me, I didn't realize that getting bolt shafts would not allow for shaft spin. So that's something to keep in mind, you know, if I'm buying another lever or parts in the future. So I will be including an E-clip shaft in the future. It's just because the quality of life is just really nice. It's just super easy to kind of, you know, unscrew, and a lot of E-clips can be annoying to deal with. So I prefer bolt shafts. I just think, yeah, I prefer a little bit of shaft spin, which this does not allow me to have. It has less shaft spin than the Sandrix V6, and the V6 already didn't have that much shaft spin. Speaking of the Sandrix V6, I think they do feel similar in the way they feel to play on, because obviously both of them are crown based levers, but I think the Coorejam feels very, very solid. And one thing I will say is that the compression, especially with the aluminium body, because the aluminium body compresses tension a little bit more than the Nylube and ivory, but the compression's major. It has major compression. It's insane. I personally like a little bit of tension in my levers. I like tension higher than average, I would say. And even for me, this has a 25 crown tension. So it's not like a 30 or a 35 or a 40. This has a very light tension, because by itself, the 25 crown tension is very, very light. 25 ST is quite light. This feels super heavy. So that's the one thing that I will say I don't like about this from stock, is that it feels super heavy and it's a touch too stiff for my liking. I can still play with it and my movement feels very sharp. As you can see, it's pretty nice. But yeah, I think the one thing to say is that it is very stiff out the box. I'd recommend for people who want to check this lever out to get the, I think it's 15 and 20. I think 15 is the lightest that Crown do, and 20. So I actually ordered 20, so that's the light green. And then I think they have a gray, which is 15. We'll check those out in a little bit, but I recommend to just get the full suite of tensions so you can really mix and match parts and find what you like the best. Do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe. Liking will help with the algorithm, commenting will also help with the algorithm, and subscribing will let me know that you enjoy the content. Let's get into it. So one thing to mention is that the switches, the KO switches don't come on this stock. The Omron A6s come with this stock. There are a few switch choices, so if you contact Coorejam, he might have different switches to put on the lever, but I think stock, the Omron A6s come on this lever. So the reason why I swapped them is because the tension was so stiff. It's like, I personally really like the Omron A6s, but I felt like with those stiffer switches and the overall compression and tension, it was just a little bit too much. So I swapped the switches just for the time being until I get a lighter tension, and then I'll put the A6s back on. But for this review, I'll be putting the A6s back on because I want to review the lever stock. So the A6s will be on the lever despite obviously having KOs right here. I really enjoy the KOs. I think the KOs are quite soft as a switch goes, but I think with the super compression that the Coorejam V4 has, because I'm not gonna lie, the compression is super major. I can't stress enough how much compression this lever actually has. If you guys thought the Sandrex V6 had compression, you haven't felt the Coorejam V4. It's insane. But having said that, the lever feels absolutely solid. It feels slightly more solid than the Sandrex V6, which is insane to say because the Sandrex V6 is a tank by itself, right? But this just feels more solid. I think the neutral return is better for me personally anyway. I really like the Sandrex V6, don't get me wrong. I think the Sandrex V6 is a great lever. I just think the Coorejam V4 to me feels one of the most solid levers that I've ever felt. Even though it is stiff, that's not something to take away from the lever because you can always just change the tension, right? Some people like super stiff tensions. For me, I like soft medium. I can do stiffer tensions, like my Super Coorejam's very stiff as well, but I think this is even stiffer than the Super Coorejam. It's just something about how it's built that makes it feel so stiff. But I really do enjoy playing with the lever, and right now it's my main lever of choice. So I think this lever is very good. And I also think when I put a slightly softer tension inside, I'm really gonna enjoy this lever. Because right now, I mean, I enjoy it by itself. My electrics are crispy, my movement's crispy. I think, as I said, it's just built like a tank. And I think this is right now to me the best crown style lever on the market, because this obviously is built upon the crown style of levers, so just like the Sandrex V6. That's why I'm kind of comparing the Sandrex V6 and the Coorejam V4, because they're quite similar levers in my opinion. What we're going to do is we're going to look at tech specs, but there's no site. Coorejam does not have a site. He has a Discord, so that's how you go about ordering one of these. You go to his Discord and then you DM him, or you ask in the Discord. I just DM'd Coorejam and asked him if he had any Coorejam V4s, and he said yes, so the rest is history. So we're gonna go through the tech specs on the Discord because this lever actually comes in a package. So we're gonna go through the tech specs and what you can expect to receive in the package, because I think the lever is expensive. I think it's 165 USD for the package, but if you look at what you get in the package, I don't think it's overpriced. I don't think it's expensive for what you actually get in the package. Now, if we're looking at something like Sandrex levers, where you literally just get the lever by itself, there's nothing included, I personally think the Coorejam V4 is better value for money than the Sandrex, purely because of how many options you get and how many extra parts you get in the package for the money. Whereas I think the Sandrex is a little bit overpriced. So I do think the Coorejam V4 is definitely better value for money. And I'm going to show you different configurations because I got a lot of parts and my order actually came up to $270, which is crazy. But I still think Coorejam is very good value for money for the parts that he sells and what's included in this package. Okay, so this is Coorejam's Discord. Now, I will leave a link in the description if I'm able to get the invite link, because I'm not too sure. I actually was invited to the Discord, but I don't have access to an invite link. But if I do come across one, I'll leave it in the description so that you guys can join and inquire about the lever. Coorejam V4 red package. So you can see this is everything that's included in the package for $165. Now, I personally think this is great value for money. So you're getting the Nylube upper, you're getting the red aluminium bottom. So as I said, Nylube is still included in the lever, so it's not completely aluminium. It's the aluminium is kind of where the tension sits and what the switches are mounted to, so the aluminium is very, very solid, but then also it has the smoothness of the Nylube upper, and the collars are also Nylube. So I think it's a very, very good blend of materials for this lever. So yeah, Nylube upper body, red aluminium bottom. We have stainless steel bolt shafts, so you get two bolt shafts. You get an 8mm and you get a 9mm. This is stainless steel, so these are going to be a little bit heavier than the red aluminium. I currently have the red aluminium bolt shaft, as you can see, and so it is a little bit lighter. I prefer aluminium personally. I do like stainless steel, but I think I prefer the lighter shafts. We get red dust washers. So the thing with the dust washers is if you get extras, we're going to talk about the extra parts. The dust washer is matched to the size, if that makes sense. So if you get like a low color, you're going to get a larger dust washer, and then if you get a full color, you will get a dust washer that matches the full color size. Circle and a square core upper guide, so you get two guides. So as you can see here in the picture, you get this circle guide, this is Nylube, and you also get a square core guide. I personally prefer the square cores just because it aids diagonals a little bit more. So yeah, he includes two collars for you in the price. You get an O-ring bushing, you get a choice of 3 actuators. So personally for me, I went with the 14.7 because the switch spacing is 15.4 So he includes 14.4, 14.7 and 15. I personally think 15 for me is a bit too sensitive, and so I went with 14.7 and it feels perfect. So yeah, he gives you 3 choices, and there's also actuator sizes below as well, extra actuator sizes. So we'll go through those once we've already run through the kind of stock stuff. So he gives you 2 grommets, 25 ST and 30 ST. Now, for me personally, I think 30 ST is going to be way too stiff for the average person. I think even 25A is too stiff for me, and I actually like playing with kind of more stiff levers. I like my Super Coorejam FANTA. I like the Coorejam V3 stiffness. Now, I don't like the Coorejam V3 throw and the lever itself, but I do like the stiffness of the lever. So it's not like I like really soft tensions. I actually like using stiffer, heavier tensions. But yeah, even this for me with the 25 is just way too stiff. It's literally tiring out my wrist playing with it. So then we have Omron A6s. So there's 2 versions of Omron switches that are commonly used in arcade sticks. Now you have this model number, which is 1C26, and you have the A6s. They're the same thing. They perform the same. So if you see 1C26, they're the same as Omron A6. Is literally the same switch, just with different pins, I guess, but the performance is the same. Batop color choosable, so you have options of white, black and red. I went with the red because the red is Nylube. Let's get into the extra parts. Stainless steel E-clip shaft. Now I would recommend to get this if you like spin. I didn't get this, and so I don't have spin on my lever. I typically prefer a little bit of spin to kind of aid with movement a little bit. Some people like no spin. This is great for you because it has literally 0 spin. It's not moving. So yeah, this is very solid. As I said, it's a super solid lever. There's no movement whatsoever. So yeah, super solid, but I personally prefer a little bit of shaft spin. You have a choice of the aluminium red bolt shaft, which I have. I think I got 9mm. We have a full color, which I also got, which is Nylube. So that's nice. And as I said before, you will see in the B-roll, but the full color also has a dust washer that kind of matches the size. So that's nice that he includes that. You can get some more switches. You can get some more actuator sizes. So 40.4, 40.7, 15.6, which is kind of crazy for the switch spacing, and 60mm, which again is just going to be way too sensitive for the switch spacing. It's all personal preference. You might like super sensitive levers. I don't really align with that kind of configuration. So yeah, different color batops. We have white and black, which are not Nylube, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have red batop, which is Nylube. And then we have a large size batop, which is white. So if we look at this one, it's basically just a large version of this. So that is what you get included. So all of this stuff is included, the top. So all of this is included for 165, which I think is really good value for money. Because if you look at Sandrux, for example, if you go for a storefront like Istmal or you go through Buttercade, you're going to be paying $30 for a bolt shaft, which is insane. So the fact that he includes 2, you would be paying $60 for this, which is crazy. So yeah, that's why I said it's very good value for money, I think. And then obviously we've got all the extra parts and stuff. So I think the ecosystem is very good. One thing to also mention is that with the configuration of the lever, you can remove these. As you can see, it's kind of like a square. So it's the exact same dimensions as Sandrux. So if you have Sandrux parts, if you have Sandrux, for example, frosted collars, they will work on the Coorejam V4. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The Sandrux ecosystem works very well with the Coorejam ecosystem, that they're very compatible. So again, if you have Sandrux parts, more likely than not, you're going to be able to use your Sandrux parts on the Coorejam V4. So it's not like you're starting from nothing. If you have Sandrux parts like me, I can just swap out parts, which is nice to know. Okay, so now we're in game, and the first thing I will say is that this lever is very rigid. It feels, not in a bad way, it feels very sturdy, but rigid, if that makes sense. The neutral feels rigid in a good way. I feel like the lever is just built like a tank. There is 0 spin, absolutely 0 spin. It doesn't even spin if I try to force it. So if you like levers that do not spin whatsoever, this is the lever for you because it has literally 0 spin, which to be honest, I prefer a little bit of spin. As stated before, I like a little bit of spin in my levers, not too much, not free spin like something like a Neo Neo, but I do like a little bit of spin. I feel like it aids movement a little bit, it aids my electrics and other inputs, so that's why I like a little bit of spin. But yeah, if you don't like spin, this is perfect for you because it literally has 0 spin. I'm trying to spin it and it's not going anywhere. It has 0 spin. So if you like that, this is for you. So inputs for me feel very consistent, like wave dashing feels quite nice. Sidestepping is pretty easy as well. That's one thing that I do like my levers to be able to kind of do. Obviously every lever can sidestep up, right? But it's like, how easy can I sidestep up without misinputting, if that makes sense? So for me, sidestepping into the background feels really smooth. Again, one thing I like is just how rigid the lever feels. And it doesn't feel rigid in a restrictive way. It actually feels like it helps inputs. Like, look how clean these electrics are. It's insane. So I really like the Coorejam V4 for electrics and, you know, Mishima style movements. Obviously, levers aren't really built for a specific character. You can play any character on any lever. It's just how it feels to do certain inputs. And to be honest, Mishima style inputs feel really, really smooth, consistent and rigid, but not in a bad way to do. I keep saying rigid because it just feels like a tank. It's built so well. You really feel that playing with it. The one thing I will say is it's stiff. It is stiff. That's probably what's contributing to the rigidity, I think, of the feeling of the lever, is that the rubber inside and the compression of the lever itself makes it stiff. So if I was you, I would buy the whole kind of crown grommet range and play around with grommets. I personally prefer the SD15 grommet. Typically, if I'm using crown levers, I wouldn't use that. I wouldn't use that light of a tension in, for example, the Sandrix V6. I just wouldn't. It's too light for me. I like levers that are kind of soft medium. They're not too rigid, they're not too stiff, but they're not as soft as something like, I don't know, a Crown 309 MJ with the white tension or the clear tension. That is too light for me. I like the purple tension the best, and I also like the purple tension in the Sandrix V6. As you can imagine, this has major compression. It's insane how much compression this lever actually has. QCFs actually feel very consistent as well. So again, Mishima style inputs feel so smooth. And Heihachi is a bunch of fun as well. And yes, I bought the stage. But yeah, I think this lever is essentially a step up from the Sandrix V6. Not a huge, I don't think there's a huge gap between this and the Sandrix V6. So if you imagine the step up from the Crown 309 MJ to the Sandrix V6, that's how this feels from the Sandrix V6. So it's kind of crazy how I thought that the Sandrix V6 was kind of the best that the Crown style levers were going to get, but I was actually pleasantly surprised when I started playing with it. The only thing I will say that I don't like is, of course, I keep saying it is stiff, but I guess that is personal preference. It's not something that you can really say, okay, it's stiff, it's a bad lever. Like, that's not how this works. You can just swap the tensions. And even though it is stiff, like the Super High FANTA actually, even though it is stiff, it still feels very, very enjoyable to use and execute moves with. Movement just feels super snappy. I really enjoy using the Coorejam V4. I feel like it's the return to neutral, and also because remember before how I was saying that it is stiff, but it's not a bad thing. Obviously, I do prefer slightly softer levers, but I feel like the snappiness, the construction of the lever itself, the snappiness and the rigidity of the lever really makes movement and just tight inputs feel super clean and consistent. I don't know how to describe it. It just feels very nice to use and rigid. And as I said before, the rigidity is not a bad thing. It actually aids my movement. I feel like it tightens stuff up a lot, and that's how I feel about using this lever. It tightens a lot of your inputs up. I don't know how to describe it. It just feels super clean. Yeah, I really enjoy this lever. Now we're going to head into some real execution stuff, as we always do. So yeah, I would say overall this lever feels super smooth. It feels stiff, but in a good way. It feels rigid, but in a good way. If you want to kind of experience the top tier crown style levers, start here, or I would say start at the Sandrix V6 or start here, either or, because I feel like they are kind of in the same tier, but I would say the Coorejam V4 is slightly above the Sandrix V6 for my preferences. The nylon battop and the nylon kind of collars, it really gives a smooth feeling, and the rigidness or the rigidity of the lever and the stiffness of the tension combined with the smoothness of the Nylube is kind of insane feeling. I would say it feels slightly less smooth than the Golden Fantas. The Golden Fanta to me is still top 1 in my opinion for my preferences. I would rank this number 2. Would you guys like to see a lever tier list? I would do it if people want to see it, and I would rank all of my levers that I have in my collection. I have quite a few, so I think that could be a fun video to do, to kind of rank my levers. But yeah, I would say the Coorejam V4 is second spot right now for me. The main thing I will say about this lever is it feels super responsive, so that's one thing that I will say. Of course, I've been mentioning how, you know, stiff levers are not my preference, but it just feels nice to play with. It feels very responsive and smooth, so that's all I can ask for from a lever, to be honest. So yeah, that was a Coorejam V4. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.